it it was like I had to understand this in a one-on-one session with my yoga teacher. But once I understood this, I understood compensation. So I don't know if it will have the same effect on you, but I think it's really important to understand. So when you're doing a twist, a rotation in the spine, so I'm using the lever of my leg to move my pelvis, which is going to rotate all the vertebrae. At the same time, my belly is, you're supposed to be thinking about your belly going in that direction. Now, as you do this, each vertebra has to move a little bit to allow for that rotation to happen. Because you have organs in here, you have bones of the rib cage, you know, you have pelvic bones. So there has to be adaptability in the body to allow for that rotation. And it's not like a one joint move. It's not like we crank up. It's not this move. It's not a huge flexion. It's a small, each vertebra making a small move, so that, you know, your spine has to be supported. It's a very vital organ. It's not, you know, it uses small amounts of movement in each vertebra in order to create a motion, as opposed to like a hip joint, which is like a big, deep flexion. So anyway, if you're doing rotation in your spine and each vertebra has to rotate, if there is a blockage in one small vertebra, or in the next, or in a whole region, if the whole lower back is tight and those muscles are gripping for dear life and like holding your spine, so it's when there is too much tightness in the lower back, you know, you need some support there to hold you upright. But if it's too much tightness, then it blocks the supply of blood to the nerves, to the bone marrow. It blocks the lymphatic drainage of the pooped material that needs to clear out towards your lymph. It creates inflammation. It creates a congested space, like an aquarium space, that generates inflammation, low-grade inflammation in the body, and that produces in the central nervous system a lack of clarity, like the neuroreceptors around the space that is congested and blocked start to create like a haze, like a fog around the neuroreceptors, and the signals, the electrical signals that they're sending to the brain, become muddled, and the central nervous system cannot actually locate. It loses neuromuscular control with that area, so that it starts to use you by moving a lot more of you, as opposed to clarifying the move, and then it ends up building more tension in the body because it's overusing you. So it upscales the whole nervous system because there is lack of good communication. You know what happens with lack of good communications? There's tension that builds up. So if you have tension in the vertebra for the reasons I just mentioned, and you try to do a rotation, what might happen is that I'm asking my body to do a rotation, yeah? But if I hit into tension into my locked up lower spine, into a lower spine that's locked up or doesn't have flexibility to move in flexion and extension here, if I hit into that lock, what will happen is the body is not going to take you into rotation. It's not going to just say, oh, Camelia, that's the end of it. That's your boundary. You cannot move further. It will do everything it can to help me achieve my goal to rotate and take my femur, my thigh, over my midline into rotation. It will try to help me. It will try. My body is like, so it's like a little child that wants to please you. It will try to let you do what you want. It's not going to stop you from doing what you want, but it will go into compensation. So if I try to rotate and I don't have availability in my lower spine and up my spine around the vertebrate, if there's locked up things there, it might, because I like try to move, I hit a tightness in my muscles, and the muscles cannot like rotate or lengthen to allow the rotation. And then what will happen is I might go into a hip hike to take it over. And that's not rotation, because the whole point of rotation in that particular move is to massage your abdominal muscles to allow them to lengthen so that they refresh, so that they're not over tightening here, and they like can lengthen so that they can tighten. If something is like over tightening all the time, it's actually not a strong muscle, it's a compromised muscle that's like overworking. So the whole point of the rotation is to lengthen the back and the front muscles and allow them to twist, to refresh them with blood and nutrients and squeeze out the poop. But if the back muscles are too tight as you go into rotation, or it could be the front muscles, doesn't matter, but let's stick with the setup that I mentioned. If they're too tight and you cannot do it, and then you go into a hip hiking to take the pelvis over, then the back muscles are actually not going to twist. Your belly muscles are not going to twist. All you're doing is like hiking and engaging these muscles here, which will end up, you know, creating tension on your psoas, giving you lower back pain, or further compromising your diaphragm, tightening up your diaphragm. Then you can't breathe, then you might have anxiety, or I mean, there are emotional responses to muscle tightness or muscle weaknesses, and the two are related. So I really wanted to do a short video, which this one is not short, but I wanted to do a video on compensations, because becoming aware of your compensations is vital to improving any athletic performance you want to achieve, and or just your grace of movement, or you know, quality of movement. It's pivotal. Becoming aware of where your compensations are and how you move in basic physiological setups is pivotal to improving your movement potential, your athletic performance, your sport performance, your daily movement performance. But it's also vital to becoming aware of the compensations is vital to undoing them, and undoing them is vital to releasing stuck stress in your body. And that's where chronic pain arises from. And not just chronic pain, but it also affects your digestive system, your hormones. Inflammation in the neurofascial body will affect your hormonal balance, your digestive system, your restorative mechanisms in the nervous system, so your ability to sleep, and your neuromuscular control. It starts to show in your neuromuscular control. So like joint performance, you might become hyper flexible in one joint or too locked up. But it goes back to the nervous system's ability to perform your desires in space. and doing a rotation and lying down, it's not like it's not a random move. It relates back to walking. So to walk, I have to be able to, so I'm standing, I shift my weight to this leg in order to be able to locomote this leg. And once I locomote this leg, I should be able to rotate and fall into space in order for this leg to shift over. This is like locomotion. Their rotation in the spine is part of walking. If you're locked up, you will begin to walk like a robot, and you're not rotating through the spine, those micro movements that happen to allow for the pelvis to locomote in space. And then you get locked out, and then you might start overusing your hips, and then tension here will create tension there, and then your lower back is a mess. So becoming aware of your compensations is why I offer one-on-one sessions, and I advise every human being to work with a movement specialist one-on-one from 2 to 6 months of their life to gain insight into their compensations. I work with the general body of work that I come from is yoga, but I think I've learned a lot from my dance practice. I grew up on a circus, so I've been within a movement community and a movement landscape all my life. I study anatomy to a level that's higher than medical students. And it's the applied anatomy of functional movement. So I know how movement affects different bones and how it challenges my nervous system. And when I look at you moving, it's called body reading. I am looking to see where your inhibitions are. And there are healthy inhibitions that you need to stabilize to locomote, but there are inhibitions that become a compensation, and they lead to compensatory patterns that lead to accumulation of stress in your body. And that's what we try to unravel in sessions with me. So when I invite people to work with me for 2 to 6 months on a weekly basis, and I do it online because I have no problem in seeing your compensatory patterns through the screen. I've worked with so many talented movement teachers that have helped me through the screen. It's not an inhibition. It's actually to your advantage because you could have the recordings and you can see, you can repeat and see it in the comfort of you not being in a challenging situation. You can go back and spend time, because it took me a long time to understand, because it ultimately comes back to my weakness, and weakness for the mind is not something that we're comfortable in staying with that in that space to explore and allow to, we usually just push it away. If you've done any form of meditation, you might have studied that. For me, this kind of move, and maybe showing it, this kind of move, and then can you see how I arch in my back? You don't need to be arching in your back to do a rotation. If you're doing that, it might be a compensatory pattern. And understanding that, I could just come down to here and wait for my glutes to open, to release. I don't have to make the move big with a hyperextension in my lower back. I'm achieving nothing of the benefits of the rotation. So, I was in some kind of movement class, and the teacher, she was like, yeah, you could go there. And I was like, no, I'm waiting for my muscles in the back line to open up and release and hydrate, so that I actually, when I do move forward, I'm doing it with an openness in my back line, and a length in my spine, so that I'm rotating with length as opposed to cranking up my vertebra and damaging joints. And that took a long time. So actually the supportive element of working one-on-one with a movement specialist to understand your compensation is someone which will hold you back and hold the space for you and support you to come in contact with the places where you are challenged. And giving your nervous system time to adapt in a slower motion or a smaller range will help you to undo the tension there, so that you could go bigger and faster in your training of whatever sport you do. But you do need that awareness practice. So I work with movement with awareness. Some of the things that we practice with the rollers is beyond your awareness, because it taps into the autonomic nervous system, which is that part of your nervous system that supports and protects you without your conscious control. But we do bring awareness in order to notice where the stuck stress is, not to over focus on it, because you don't want to be focusing on your pain. It will just amplify the real estate in your brain that's screaming for help. If you over focus on bad things, it's really not a good thing. If you're like really struggling, maybe it's a good idea to dissociate a bit, go spend time with your friends, or you know, go to the seaside, refresh a little bit so that you can come back with new resources. But using your awareness to notice stuck stress will help you undo the stuck stress and the compensations in your body. I hope this video was helpful for someone, and I can let you know that this work I'm talking about, it's not just at the level of inexperienced movers. It's very much in the domain of professional athletes, because I've studied with people that were at the top of their game and they fucked up their joints because they were going too fast with too little awareness, and they had to go back small, go back to the ground, go back to slower moves, understand their anatomy, understand the responses of their nervous system, understand the responses of their emotions, their desires in a movement, in order to undo those patterns that force them into compensation. This is any mover's practice, and I encourage everyone out there to work with a movement specialist who can body read and has some resources and some knowledge on imparting self-care techniques to work with your neurofascial body and stimulate collagen. I hope you have a lovely Sunday, and I hope this was helpful for getting you thinking about things, because it takes time for awareness to evolve.